Good morning. All right, critical win last week going against a divisional opponent that we know well. They know us well. Those games are always tough. But the number one thing we want to get out of that was really to focus on us. And that's what the focus was all week. And when I say that, no disrespect to the Bears at all, but, man, what is our philosophy defensively when it comes to playing good defense? What is our identity that we want to put on tape every week? And we did that for the most part. When it comes to our philosophy, we want to limit points, right? And we got to 17, right? And that's what we want to get to. We want to take the ball away. We did that twice. And we want to win the situations. When I say situations, I'm talking about third down, which we did a good job of. Red zone, our guys, one thing, we really did a good job. 2 minutes where we failed, right? Usually a situation where we do a really good job in, and we gave a touchdown, right, in that situation. But for the most part, our guys did a really good job in that game. Going into San Francisco, a team with a winning pedigree, it's going to be a tough match. They have guys on that team with a lot of pride that's going to come out. Now they're going to play their asses off. But we're looking forward to this matchup.
How important was it to get Melifonwu back, to get that versatility back when maybe you needed it most with Carlton being down?
Listen, with so many guys that we have out, I mean, anytime we get another guy back, it always helps us. And if he's a guy that we can utilize in a number of packages, he can play the dime for us. He can play safety. He can play nickel. And we utilize him as a safety only in this game. There's other ways we want to utilize that player, but for him to come back, to use his blitz ability, his ability to cover, was really good for us. So I'm looking forward to utilizing that player going forward.
Did you go into that game expecting to use him as much as you did, or was it when you saw him out there and you saw how he was moving, you felt more comfortable expanding the role?
Well, I did, and just talking to him throughout the game, right, he was telling Coach, I'm ready to go, I'm good. So when he tells me that, I'm going to continue to push as far as I can.
From your perspective, what are keys in 2 minutes to be successful as a defense? Because sometimes, offensively, they're in hurry up and they're trying to force some issues. What are your keys to successful 2 minutes?
First off, understanding the situation. Every 2-minute situation is not the same, right? And that's something that our head coach does a really, really good job of during the week. We've actually done that more in the last couple of weeks than we've done throughout the season, which I really, really enjoy, because it puts me in a situation to have to think on the fly and be able to give the guys a call and play accordingly. So, but that, knowing the situation as far as time and timeouts, understanding what that offense is trying to do and how they operate in a 2-minute situation, because every offense is different. Some have a set plays that they run, and if you understand what those plays are, it allows you to anticipate and be able to make plays. Some people just use their whole playbook, right? So we have to understand that. And then making sure the communication is on point, right? That's the number one thing in 2 minutes that usually gets defenses messed up is the communication, because there's tempo on offense. So the guys have to get the call, get lined up, and be able to execute. And I think our guys do a good job of that.
DB that had an increased workload was Amik. What did you think of his performance on Sunday?
Amik did a really good job for us. Listen, I know it was different because he's usually playing inside for us, but the thing is, throughout his career, he's played on the outside. So to him, it was like riding a bike, So he went out there, he competed. Man, I tell you what, he went after the ball quite a bit. I think he had 2 or 3 PBUs. The punch-outs that he showed in that game was outstanding, and that's what we try to do as a defense. And, again, we talked about that all week, of making sure we hunt the football, and he was one of the guys that did a really good job with that. So I was proud of the way he played. Continue to see him do the things that he did in this past game as we move forward.
What is it about his either skill set or maybe more importantly mentality that allowed him to do that so seamlessly, bounce from one to the other?
Listen, he's had that coming out of college. When you talk about the mentality, he's a pit bull. He's tough. He has a swagger about himself. He believes in himself no matter what the situation is. Get beat, don't get beat. I mean, he believes that he can cover anybody out there. And you like that within a corner, So he's had so many reps on the outside from his previous teams he's played for. Playing inside was something, I don't want to say new for him, all right, but for our defense it was new because the way he used our nickel. So for him to go back outside, it was easy for him.
I know versatility is something you preach and expect from your guys, but when you branch back in the slot, hit back in the lineup, Amik outside, like when you see it play out like that, you're message is being received, obviously.
No doubt, and you have to do what you got to do when you have these injuries, you know. So here's the better way to say that is our guys are very selfless, and whatever they can do to help the team, they're willing to do it. Listen, Branch was having a really good, he is having a really good season playing safety for us, and for him to end up going back to the nickel spot doing something, I don't want to say totally different because we still played him in those situations, was really selfless of him. Right, Meek too, because there are some things that he liked about playing nickel, right? So we moved him on the outside. So, man, I'm excited about all our guys because they have a listen. Whatever we can do to help the team mentality, they're going to do it.
In terms of making adjustments with injuries, you've been doing the same thing at linebacker, especially since Enzo and Malcolm have gone out. Mix and matched a lot there. The last 2 weeks you've gone with Ben Neiman pretty heavily, more so than you used him all year. He's been here all year. What has he done to maybe catch your eye in practice to earn that bigger role?
Well, what you said was key. He's been here all year, so he knows our system inside and out. And then there's different packages we want to use guys for. For example, Zeke. We're going to use Zeke in a ton of coverage situations because that's what he can do. And Ben can play every position. As far as linebacker, he can play the Sam, he can play the Mike, he can play the Will. So when you have a guy like that and there's movement that goes along, sometimes you don't have to flip guys. You just let guys stay there. They can be the Mike or the Will in one before the motion, and then when the motion happened, they can end up being in a different spot. So those guys do a really good job of understanding that. And when you have guys like that, man, listen, you want to put them on the field.
49ers obviously lost some key players to injuries. What's still dangerous about their offense? They still get
Those powerful players that they have, you know, like Kittle. I mean, he is a weapon. And when you watch him on tape, he looks even faster than he's been in his years. Man, he's going up and getting the ball. He's blocking. They're running the ball to him at the point of attack. To me, he's the best tight end in the game, right? And that's just who he is, all right? Then Debo, man, you watch him last week, man, he was a man on the mission, right, against the Dolphins. Man, as many times they was getting in the ball in space and many tackles he was breaking. So he was the Debo of old that we've always seen. And then this quarterback, man, he's a guy that can just, like, he's surgical, you know, with the way that he operates. So this is going to be a challenge for us. It really is. But I'll tell you what, our defense is looking forward to this challenge.
One more on Iffy, just watching the tape back, I mean, he just seemed like he was very vocal.
Say it again?
Iffy just seemed like he was very vocal in his communication, like he saw it really well. And obviously he's been in your scheme from the start. You know, when you're plugging and playing a bunch of new pieces, how valuable is it to have somebody that's such a strong communicator to kind of hold that thing together for you?
Well, listen, I demand that out of our safeties as far as the communication part.
Yep.
Just like our Mike linebacker, they're really the linebackers of the secondary, and they have to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Listen, if he goes through every walkthrough, he's been in every meeting, so that doesn't surprise me, and I expect that from him anyway. He's a very intelligent player. Again, he plays a lot of different positions for us, so he has to be able to communicate at a high level. So being able to do that, you know, coming back after in this game, man, I expected that.
What's the key to that focus on the road? You know, how you guys were able to be so successful?
Just play. We're at home, we're on the road. We can run the ball, we can throw the ball, we can play defense. That's how we win.
How do you expect his presence now to help your defense?
Well, listen, I was with Teddy in New Orleans, and Teddy is one of the most vocal noise talkers that you ever have as a quarterback. And I'm excited about that. I really am, because it really brings a value to your defense as far as pissing your defensive guys off, all right, especially when he's out there throwing the ball around. So it was the same thing in New Orleans. He brought that mentality here. Everybody loves him. Everybody. He's one of the best leaders I've ever seen. And it's something to that, to where you're not starting, but guys look at you as a leader of a team. And you don't get many guys like that, because it's usually your play is what some people look at as far as leadership. But, man, just the way that he carries himself, Just the way that he can talk to everybody on the team, from O-line, D-line, linebackers, DBs, running backs. It doesn't matter. He has a relationship with everybody on this team, and that's a special person. So I'm excited to have that player back. Yes, he's going to help us in all phases of the game. I'm just looking forward to being going against him in practice.
San Francisco, it doesn't matter who's in their backfield. It seems like they run the ball really, really well. What is it about them conceptually that Kyle Shanahan kind of has them doing that allows them to run the ball no matter who they plug in back there?
Well, listen, I think it first starts off with the mentality of how they go about doing things. Listen, we know they're going to run it. They know they're going to run it. And their mentality is, listen, you're going to have to stop it. So it's a tough system, which requires tough men, which you have to be on your assignment to be able to stop it. And we know that. And if you look at the game from last year, I thought our guys did a really good job early. And then some of their guys start to will themselves into making some plays. And that's what we have to really do this game. Our top guys have to out-will their top guys. And I'm looking forward to seeing our guys do that.
It's a win. We had the whole day off without really being stressed. Had the extra day, I should say. We'll pay for it on the flip side. Snakes, no snakes. I don't like snakes.
So I think they've been pretty consistent over the years out there. Under Kyle, just anything in particular jump out with them?
Yeah, I think they're a very good group. Their punt returner is a very good player. He's a rookie out of Arizona. I think he's done a great job. He's competitive. He hits the ball downhill. He's quick. He's got some elusiveness. He's done a nice job. I think their kick returner is a decent player, number one. He's a great player, Deebo Samuel. Back there deep, they play him, which I respect and admire the fact that they use him back there. The guy goes back there. You've heard me say that. He's a great player on offense, and he's back there doing it on special teams also. And he's a weapon you got to account for. So he's very good. Their punter's done a nice job. They lost their starting punter, but their backup guys come in, or a guy they picked up who we know well. He's in Chicago for a long time, O'Donnell. He's done a nice job for them there. They got good players. I know Kyle Shanahan always puts an emphasis on the back end of the roster. They always got speed. And then their defensive players are really good. I think their defense is good. They got guys who run and hit, and usually if you got a bunch of good guys that run and hit, kind of like Houston on defense, and those guys end up being pretty good on special teams too. So, any given week in this league, you always got your hands full, but yeah, it'll be a fun game. They're fun to watch. Obviously, big game going there, Monday Night Football, so it should be good.
If you saw the Ravens game the other night, after the safety, when they had the free kick, they kicked it off rather than punted it. Is that something about the new rules, or is that just a preference based on who's kicking?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with that is your most consistent plays to kick the ball off. If the punter should be able to get it that far, but if he mishits the ball, which there's a chance he does, then it's not going to get there. So I feel like most teams have gone with the kickoff in that situation. And anyway, the guy had an incredible kick. I mean, he kicked that thing, I don't know, the goal line or -2 or something like that. And then they obviously had a good return. I think the guy ran over somebody and got downhill for some more yards.
Probably not a difficult decision to kick a 60-yard field goal with Jake Bates. 65 is a little bit wilder, I guess, particularly outside. What was your thought process with attempting that kick, and I guess how excited were you for him to have that kind of opportunity? I mean, he obviously. We'll start with the play before. So we obviously messed it up. We had the penalty, which then turned 60 into 65. So it would have been a 60-yard attempt. You've heard me say it, the closer you are, the easier the kick. It doesn't matter how much closer, how much further back. So obviously I didn't love the fact that it went back 5 yards. I thought Bates hit a great ball on the second one and gave us a chance. It obviously probably a little bit short and to the right. But he did get a hold of that thing, which was impressive in those conditions. He might have had a touch of a wind behind him, but with the cold weather and all that, it probably really wasn't much.
So anyway, I thought he gave us a chance. Obviously, we're trying to make the kick. But really, we hurt ourselves with the penalty before that, and it was clearly a foul on us. We got down in our stance way too early. It's just poor operation, which really falls on my shoulders there. So we took ourselves out of a chance, which could be important in these games, like we talked about this morning. There as a team, you got to execute. All these things are not a big deal until they're a huge deal, and it costs you a game. So we got to treat it that way and make sure we improve.
Jake said that was interesting to me, and maybe it's not interesting, but he said he kicks all his kicks with the same power. Like he gives full bore if it's a 30-yard kick versus a 65-yard kick. Is that how you coach it? Do different kickers approach that differently with leg tempo and whatnot? Or?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think I do like that approach. I'll start with that. I like that approach. To me, if you can hit one kick, you got a chance to get very good at that one kick. And when I say that, I'm saying if the ball's on the left hash, it's the same kick as the ball on the right hash, as the ball in the middle of the field, as a kick from the 15-yard line, or as a kick from the 40-yard line. If you're hitting that same kick every single time, then you got a good chance at getting better and better at that. The more things you do, so one guy said to me a long time ago, if you were a juggler and I had you juggle 3 balls, you would probably be better at juggling 3 than juggling 8. So if you're a kicker and you can hit one kick, I guarantee you're better off hitting one kick than you're going to be hitting 3 different kicks. So taking something off and all that, to me, is not great. Now, that being said, I do think that there's some players that played this game for a long time at that position, and they may do a little bit of that. And their normal kick is a little bit off. And then if they need to wind up from further away, then they wind up a little bit. But, yeah.
How good was it to lead back? I know you might not have him this week, but just getting back into the mix. And maybe if you can just touch on, Alexander, Kennedy, some of the guys that played in his spot there and no hiccups at all.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we love Leaf, and so it'd be great to get him back whenever that happens this week or next. I do think that those other guys have gone in there and done a great job. Sometimes you don't see it in the yards and all that stuff, but a lot of that depends on the team you're playing against, the situation in the game, where they're punting from on the field, the style of play that their punt team has. Do they kick the ball, drive the ball down the field 50 yards and give up some return yardage, or are they kicking it more or punting it more like 40 yards and trying to get a fair catch? And I feel like with those guys back there, it's just happened to be that we've played some teams that aren't punting the ball as far down the field and trying to minimize the returner a little bit. And that's just their style of going about the play. And so they don't have the same numbers as maybe Leaf, but I think they've gotten back there and done a great job. And then, the big thing is this time of year, especially you get outside Chicago there, is making sure that you field the ball, making sure that you keep our team away from the ball. I was just talking to Chris Spielman about it, but sometimes it's the plays that don't happen that no one recognizes that are actually, help make you play well. Like, if we turn the ball over 5 times, everyone will know about it. You don't turn it over and everyone thinks that's what you're supposed to do every week, which is true. That is what you're supposed to do every week, but not every team does that every week, and sometimes you take it for granted. But so those guys have done a great job. I don't take it for granted because I've seen the other side of it. Good to get him back, and then hopefully also Germ. Hopefully we can get him back also, so should be good.
You guys were looking at him in the USL. Is there any stories that kind of stuck out about him, and as you guys were bringing him in, that let you know that he can convert to this level, and has he shot you at all with how he's been able to be steady throughout the season?
It's a good question. My only real exposure to him, obviously watching him on TV. The truth is, the first thing I heard from, I got a text message on my phone from a guy, and he said, "Hey man, did you see that kick?" It was a 60-something yarder he had hit. I hadn't, but I did. So anyway, that was the first time I'd heard about him. And then obviously that year he had a great year. And so you looked at the tape, you watched more about him. And then I didn't know him or any of that, hadn't got a chance to work him out, any of that. But then he came in here for a visit and met with us, and I got a chance to sit down with him. And it was good because I mean, I was very real with him about what the opportunity was going to be. I mean, I feel like all those guys deserve the truth. That's really all we all want. And sometimes it's telling them things they don't like, and sometimes it's telling them things they like. But anyway, he was great because I felt like he handled it well, and you could tell that he liked the opportunity, and he didn't care the fact that it was like, hey, this is going to be an open competition. You know, it's not your job, and that's it. And that didn't faze him at all, so that was encouraging. And then ultimately, I mean, you guys have heard me say it, but if you can go out there and make kicks, then you're probably going to come in here and make kicks. So he did it for someone else. He could do it here. And then I do think that he has really improved a lot throughout the course of the season. I mean, you guys got to see him in training camp, and he had some ups and downs. And there were some good days, and there were some days that weren't as good. But the one thing he has always done is when he got into games, whether it's Kansas City in the preseason, you know, there was clutch situation. He's played big in big moments for us, and that's an important quality at that position. You can miss some kicks along the way, but you got to make the big ones. So anyway, he's done great.
What happened on that?
Yeah, so the penalty, really what happened is we got in our stance so early, and Jake hadn't even approached the ball yet or started his walk-off. So we were down there forever. So then Hogan was standing up higher than normal, and then as he went to get down and really get set, which it looked like we were already set, but he lowered his hips to sink down to get ready to snap the ball, and they moved. And so then it was on us, which was the right call.
Coaches say before that can kind of hurt a quarterback's confidence to throw an interception on a Hail Mary before half or something like that. Does that same logic apply to kickers when you're, you know, where they're trying a really long field goal, or is there something about Jake's mental makeup that kind of makes you feel like you have the green light to send him out?
Yeah, I don't worry about that so much. I mean, I feel like for those guys, not that you ever want an excuse, but I mean, it's a long kick. But I do think the one thing that happens to him is, in my experience is it gets used against him in the statistics or the numbers, you know, and people are like, oh, well, he was only whatever % that year. And it's like, yeah, but 3 of them were situations like Bates had. One of them, you know, and some guys have none of those, and you're comparing the guy who had none of those kicks to the guy who had 3 of those kicks, and the guy went 0 for 3 on those, you know, and so now he has 5 misses on the year, but really he has 2 misses that were like manageable kicks. So those things get pulled into the same group, and we look at them statistically from the same way. And unfortunately, that goes against those guys. And people say that all the time. Well, he didn't have a great year, you know, and they're just looking at the numbers, and it's like, well, if you look deeper in that, you'd see this guy's a pretty good player who had a pretty good year, you know. So it doesn't bother me. I don't know if it bothers him or not. You'd have to ask him. But to me, I mean, if you're a kicker, you want a chance to swing at the long ones, really, you know. I'm hoping he gets a chance to swing at one of those things indoors from far back there because I know what he's got.
Really just want to start off by saying, you know, one of the things that surprised me a little bit coming into this season, last offseason, I should say, was the fact that the whole offensive staff remained as it was from the previous year. And we had 2 seasons of being really top 5 in a lot of major categories, and I thought for sure a number of those guys would have more interest in getting poached and going elsewhere. But we were very fortunate they were all come back. I think we got position coaches that are future coordinators and future head coaches. And I think we got some really good young coaches that are going to be ready to be position coaches sooner rather than later. And I'm saying all that because when I see a play like the one we had in the game last week, not only come to life and get executed like it did, but get the publicity that it did, really, Seth Ryan, Stephen Oliver, and JT Barrett, they've been in charge of our specials for not just this year, but for the last few years. And there's a reason why we have probably a little higher success rate for those special plays, and they're a big reason why. They have a ton of creativity. They bring a lot of ideas to the table. So I really want to start off here today by giving them a shout out. They've been doing a great job here for the last 3 years, and they're certainly deserving of more responsibility, not only here, but maybe elsewhere as well, wherever that opportunity unfolds.
In charge of the specials, can you just explain that? What do they do to help?
Yeah, so every coach on staff, they have areas of expertise that we delegate on out, and they're really in charge of it. You know, Hank's very heavily involved in the running game, obviously. third down, red zone, everybody's kind of got their own spot where they're the expert of, because there's just so much film to watch. And as a coordinator, I'm trying to digest it all, but you can always go to that certain coach and get a good feel for the lay of the land and get you to step up before you have to dive through all the tapes. So those young guys, they've been in charge of those specials now for the last couple of years, and they certainly have some off-the-wall ideas at times, but it's pretty cool to see it all come to life.
AG talked about that with Shep, how he felt like a responsibility to be developing him for the next opportunity when that comes. Do you kind of approach your position the same way? Obviously, you've got so much on your plate with orchestrating the offense, but do you take a mentorship of helping bring these guys up to what their next role might be?
Yeah, I might not be quite as, I don't want to say deliberate or intentional, because that's certainly a thought of mine each year in the off season. Once you get into the season, it gets a little bit harder to think about that. Your focus is solely on the players and the opponent at hand. But in the off season, a lot of thought's gone into developing the staff, what's going to help them grow as coaches, the detail. They got great work ethic. They're excellent teachers, and I think all those guys are very demanding of their position rooms, and that's a great starting point for all of them. But where can they grow beyond? You can only coach what you know, and so is it have Brunell learn a little bit more about Hank and the run game and what we're trying to get done there? Is it JT spending some time with Scotty Montgomery and what the backs are being taught in protection, so that when he has his own quarterback room, that transition is seamless? So yeah, there's a lot of that does go on, not maybe during the year, but in the off season, that professional development is a huge part of what we do.
Some of those trick plays a little bit. I mean, how did that come up? We heard the player's perspective, but the stumble run play, where did that come from? Like, just your perspective on how that play came to life.
Yeah, I mean, you're watching tape and you see things happen, and listen, that one, honestly, I think the Panay pass is a little bit more special than that one personally. That one, that's a play that every team runs, and we just happened to put a little hot sauce on the ball handling. That was really how we kind of viewed that going into it. And so, yeah, we saw it on tape, and we saw they had some veteran linebackers, that particular crew, that could sniff things out pretty quickly and diagnose. And so we wanted to try to get their eyes away from what we were really trying to do. And so that was the magic behind that one. And Jared and Gibby and really the whole group, they did a heck of a job with it.
Looking at the coaches, how would you assess Scotty Montgomery and his readiness being? He's been a college coach, runs an offensive coordinator. College, his next step, potential opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a unique perspective because he's been in that head chair at the college level, and you feel that when you're in the meeting room. He understands how lonely it can be at the top at times. I've been around head coaches that talk about, man, when you get up here, you're kind of isolated a little bit from the rest of the coaches, and I think he understands that. He's a great bridge between us and the head guy, and certainly for me as a coordinator, I sleep well at night because he provides, he fills in the gaps wherever he sees that something might be lacking. So it's not something I take for granted. He's certainly ready to call plays. He's done that in the past. Just whenever he gets that opportunity, he'll do that. And I think he's going to be a heck of a great head coach one day, too, when he gets that chance.
I think his first game was against the 49ers, when he was a rookie, and he may have allowed a sack, but Bosa came out of that game saying that guy's going to be something special. Can you just reflect on how far Panay has come since that game? He was excellent. Obviously, he's a rookie, but where he is now.
Yeah, I think that first year, what I immediately flashed back to was less the San Fran game. It was more the Rams game. And he had a couple times where he went one-on-one with Aaron Donald, and he did not back down. In fact, they were towing the line right through the edge of the whistle and going back and forth. And so you saw the demeanor, you saw the attitude, you saw the intensity, everything that you thought you were getting with him coming out of Oregon. And from rookie year until now, all he's done is polish up his game in terms of technique, in terms of fundamentals, and honestly, I think it's the leadership portion that stands out more to me than any. He really is the tone setter for us on offense. You know what we're going to get each and every week. He's going to drive guys off the ball. He's looking to take souls out there.
We didn't know what to expect from Krishna Hagini. You obviously were seeing him on the practice field and felt comfortable with that decision. looked like he was very natural and comfortable out there. What was your assessment of his performance after you went back to the film?
Yeah, he did a great job. He did. We know he's got an excellent first step. He beats the opponent off the ball, and then what showed up is what you saw at Boston College, which is the cleaning of the pocket and playing with a little nasty to him, which we certainly embrace. Hank Fraley likes to think it reminds him of himself. I don't know about that necessarily, but Christian, I think, showed a glimpse of what a bright future he has.
He looked really natural in the screen game as well. I mean, how difficult is that for a young lineman to understand the responsibilities with the landmarks and really get to that second level responsibility?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point that you make, because it's been something that's taken us a little while. I feel like almost over the last second half of the season here, we've really caught on to our screen landmarks and trusting those with the back, the receivers, the O-line, and to see a guy that missed training camp show up and in his first start be as in tune and detailed as the rest of the group, I thought that was extremely encouraging.
You talk about the specials. How often do they come to you and it's almost too far?
That's every week. Those guys, Chris Spielman's the same way. He's all over the place, and so we got to dial him back a little bit. But the best part of what we do, the head coach knows no bounds, and so he wants to push the limits as much as anybody. And when you got a guy leading the charge like that, the rest of us are, oh really? You want to do that? All right, we'll give it a try. So.
How exactly do you say no to Chris Spielman?
Yeah, very gently.
Not necessarily throwing a coach under the bus, but is there a play call you can tell, like, it's never making your playbook? You just got it, you look at it.
Yeah, that happens, but try to do so in an encouraging way. And, oh yeah, maybe next week, that sort of thing.
Where creativity comes from? Where do you feel like, was it a source, like when you were watching football or a certain, maybe college, growing up or anything, where do you feel like your creativity came from on the offensive side?
Oh, shoot. I don't know how to answer that one, to be honest with you. What we try to do is we try to accentuate what our guys do well, and we got a number of talented individuals. I mean, you take the reverse, for instance, in that Chicago game, and call it right into nickel pressure, and you got just two phenomenal athletes with Gibbs and J-Mo, and they're somehow able to make the exchange and make it work. So when you have guys that it seems like anytime they touch the ball, they understand the concept of the play and they can make things work. You can dabble on the edges and see how far you can take some things. So here's what I know. I mean, the game's been around for a long time. There's 10, 20 years from now, they're going to be running plays that we haven't even seen yet. So millions of plays in this world, and sometimes you cycle back to old school things, and sometimes you try to find what's new and has yet to be done.
Those great weeks, you've had a deep ball to J-Mo, like right in stride. And early on, it seemed like there was a calibration between Jared and that kind of speed. How in tune is that chemistry with them now, and I guess how long did it take to really kind of come together?
2.5 years. I mean, shoot, we struggled there that first year when he got healthy to truly get on the same page. And as coaches, we saw it. We saw the potential. And with Jared, he's a timing, he's a rhythm quarterback. He needs reps, and just like the great ones do. I mean, he's no different. And so it was just a matter of time, and we knew it was going to click. And when it does click, man, what's better than a 2-play drive? Like that's the potential that Jameson has to this offense. And it's a beautiful thing to see a post versus single high like that. I know this. It does our offense wonders going into the end of the season here and into the postseason to put that type of stuff on tape.
He's closing in on 1,000 yards. What do you think the upside is for him, down the road?
Yeah. Shoot, I don't know if you can put a number on the limit, but I know he's surrounded by some really good players, and so when you get a bunch of talented guys together, they can do some really special things.
There was some talk kind of right after the Montgomery injury about making sure, Gibbs' workload was managed. He had 23 carries last game. I'm just curious if you kind of expected or expect that to continue going forward, or I guess what your plan is for that.
Probably, I think less in the total number of carries and more about the reps. I think Scotty said last week we were thinking somewhere in the 40 range, and we really nailed that. And so Jefferson and Craig came in, and we didn't miss a beat when they came in and spelled them for a little bit. And then Vaki came in for the 2-minute drive and did a nice job as well. So I would anticipate a similar rotation going forward.